Welcome to the Soft Matter Show. This is Amal Narayanan. I'm a chemist and a polymer scientist. In this podcast, we will talk about soft matter science and have fireside chats with the researchers. Please enjoy the show. Hello, Soft Matter people. Welcome to another episode of the Soft Matter Show. Our today's guest is Dr. Bibiana Campos Seijo. Bibi is the current editor-in-chief of Chemical and Engineering News. In this episode, Bibi shared her thoughts on the world of science journalism and science communication. Bibi talked about her journey across the world to pursue science journalism. On a side note, Bibi is a strong person. Well, Bibi is a very strong person. In 2016, Bibi broke the world record in powerlifting for her weight class and age by lifting a massive 320 pounds. Please check the show notes to see the video. Before we start this episode, I have a small announcement. Karthika Suresh, Jelina Dinik and I are organizing a virtual polymer physics symposium for graduate students and postdocs. This virtual symposium has research talks from students and postdocs, perspectives from academic and industrial panelists, and discussions on diversity. In the panel, we have Dr. Irada Isaev from US FDA, Dr. Kurt Koppy from Dow Chemical Company, Dr. Lashanda Corley from University of Delaware, Dr. Amanda Marshall from Rice University, and Dr. Vivek Prabhu from US NIST. Please check out lu.ma/VPPS21 for the details. The abstract submission is open until July 23rd. Please register as a speaker or attendee at lu.ma/VPPS21. Thank you. Now let's hear from Dr. Bibiana Campos Seijo. Today, we have Dr. Bibiana Campos Seijo here at this Soft Matter Show. Bibi is the editor-in-chief of the popular science magazine, Chemical and Engineering News, popularly known as C&EN. Under Bibi's leadership, C&EN has become a modern media organization that brought ambitious journalism to chemical scientists. Bibi is an outreach champion and was a leader in initiating the Talented 12 program and transforming C&EN to languages other than English. With that, let's hear from Bibi. Welcome to the Soft Matter Show.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. So the first question I normally ask is that out of the places that you have lived or you have worked, where do you like the most?
It's interesting. So I was born in Spain, and then I moved to the UK with an Erasmus program, which is an exchange program that they do in Europe, where different universities exchange students. And I went to Manchester, which is in the north of England, and I have only been in the US for about 6 years. Overall, in the UK, I spent about 17 years. So the majority of my life was in my native country in Spain, then the UK for 17 years, and then the US for 6. My favorite country is England, or the UK in general. I love the sense of humor. I think that they are very nice people to work with. We had many friends there, but in general, it feels very natural to me to be there. It's it's a great country, and despite of what a lot of people say, the food is very good.
You get the best Indian food there, I think. That's what I heard.
Of course. Yes. I mean, specifically, Manchester is a very multicultural city. It has a very large Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi population. So there's a lot of different foods that you can try there. It also has a very large Chinese community as well, and it is probably a hub for students from all over Europe. I had a lot of friends from France, Greece, and places like that. So pretty much every other person is not from the UK. So originally, right? And I think that is phenomenal. Specifically, Manchester is a great city that doesn't get enough press, actually. But yeah, the music scene and the food is phenomenal. So in any case, yes, I love the UK. I love the food. I love cricket and all those sports as well. I used to play cricket for a bit, actually.
Oh wow! Then we have a lot more to chat today.
Yes.
So. Yeah, Manchester gets its fame, I think, from Manchester United than the culture or the other parts. I think the most of the press goes to the Manchester United being an awesome soccer team.
Yes, this soccer, yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a business, and from that perspective, they make a lot of money. But the city has a lot, to see, and I think that again, it's kind of. It has an interesting history that is related to the Industrial Revolution as well. The cotton mills and all of that. There's lots of canals. They used to have boats to bring goods into the Manchester and then out to places like Liverpool, for example, and then these products would go around the world. So it's an interesting city. The same Birmingham is the same as well. They are supposed not to be pretty cities, but they have a lot of interesting things about them, and people in general are again very nice. They're not as perhaps as cold, if I can use that word, as people are perceived in London. Where there's there's a lot of people commuting, traveling, and perhaps not being so friendly. In Manchester, the first thing that somebody will say when the bus driver, if you go onto a bus, they will say "Morning, love." Right? And they're very friendly. So yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you moved from Spain after your PhD. Am I correct? No.
So I was doing my degree in Spain, in Santiago de Compostela, which is in the north, and I moved to the UK to do the last year of my degree with the Erasmus exchange, and then I stayed in the UK to do my PhD.
Okay. So what made you what are the jobs you had? After the UK, you moved to US for working with the C&EN, I suppose. So what are the jobs that you had before you came to the US?
Right. So when I finished my PhD, I did some lecturing at the university, and that was fun. And then I was doing some language tutoring as well part time, but I guess that the most significant jobs are in when I started in publishing. I started as a technical editor, which is on the journals side, on the scholarly publishing side, with the European Respiratory Society. So it's all about lung and asthma, COPD, and all those kinds of conditions, which was really interesting. But that's very technical, and it's a lot of attention to detail and those kinds of things. And then I
was it related to your PhD? Is there a reason why you went to the respiratory journals?
No, there's no. It wasn't related, but they basically looking for technical editors who had a scientific background at the PhD level, and also who could speak English. This was really interesting because I went in to do my interviews, and they were doing attention to detail tests, but also grammar tests. And out of there were five of us. I was the only one that was non-native to Britain, and I got the highest scores in the grammar test.
Or confidence, you say?
Yeah, I don't know. It's because they don't teach grammar, British grammar in the schools and in Spain, because we learn the language. We need to learn the grammar, right? So anyway, but that's a fun fact, I guess. But So that was I was in journals, and then I moved to magazines. I went to work for Advanced Communications, which is now part of UBM, which is a big organization that do a lot of events. I think that's one of the main businesses, and there I totally kind of like fell in love, and quotation marks with my boss when I met him. He had just joined the company, and to this day, he's probably one of the most fun people out there, to work with and to talk with. And he saw something in me. I don't know, because I didn't really have a lot of experience, but he really took a chance, and I was there for about a year or so, and I absolutely loved it. And it gave me a lot of experience, a lot of opportunity to do different things. And then after that, I went to work for the Royal Society of Chemistry, and absolutely love that organization. That's in Cambridge in the UK, and I was there for about 6 years. And there I was the editor-in-chief of Chemistry World, which is the monthly publication that they send to their members. And then in 2014, at the end of the year, I moved to the US to be the editor-in-chief of Chemical and Engineering News.
So how did that happen? Like, that is my most curious part about it. Like, how did you make that transition from the technical editor to the editor-in-chief of like monthly publications?
Right. Yes. So I think that the when they talk about lucky breaks or the inflection points and those kinds of concepts, I think that me meeting Peter Houston, who was my boss at Advanced Star, that was kind of like my lucky break. As I said, we kind of like fell in love with each other, immediately get on really very well. And as I said, I didn't have a lot of experience writing, because my experience was, doing the kind of like technical editing, which is a very different kettle of fish. And I think he took that chance. And then from that, it's just, I guess that I wouldn't say a natural progression, but, you go from a smaller team to a bigger team. And of course, the change from pharmaceutical titles, which is what I was doing at Advanced Star, to then the RSC and ACS, where that's the Royal Society of Chemistry and American Chemical Society, where it's chemistry. I think that kind of like, played off the fact that I have a PhD in chemistry. So, I think it was kind of a little bit of an inflection point, or a lucky break, if you want to call it that I moved from the dark side, to the journals, which is very heavy going. It's very, again, as I said, technical editing, at least the way we were doing it then, it was very much about, attention to detail and, paper after paper after paper. So that's why I call it the dark side, because there wasn't a lot of, variety. Although I love the organization, and the people I was working with are fantastic.
So you have a PhD in chemistry, right? Like, let me go back a little bit back in time. So you have a PhD in chemistry, and you are like, let's say you finished the PhD. And how did you make that transition to go to an editorial job? Because that's not like very popular, at least in the US. It's not very popular, or I mean, maybe it's getting popular now, but in the previous time it was not. So how did you make that decisions which led you to a career which is like sort of alternative career?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess in a way, I wouldn't say that it is by chance, but maybe by process of elimination, because I knew I didn't want to be in the lab for 40 years or for the rest of my career. I found the work in the lab lonely, and I had a number of interactions with the RSC. I mean, as I was a student, as I told you, in Manchester, they had come in, or representatives of the organization had come in and organize events. I particularly remember they did an event where they were talking about the chemistry of beer, and
that should be very interesting.
For obvious, yes, he was very well attended for obvious reasons. They were giving free samples at the end. Of course, we were all over, drinking age, and they talk about the chemistry of the process of making beer, and as a potential industry that people might want to go into. And so that's just one example. And I was very interested about the work that they did, because I thought that was fun, organizing those kinds of events and thinking about how you promote, and again, quotation marks, promote chemistry to scientists, and specifically to chemistry students, and then the broader public as well. So I kind of like had a little bit of an interest in then, but I think it's a bit of a process of elimination, and then of course when you finish your PhD, and as I was doing other, kind of like part-time jobs and things like that, you set up your alerts, with the jobs, and I had specifically, been looking for, editing, in the jobs in the publishing industry, although I had very little knowledge of what it took, and then just totally by chance, I just saw the advert for the technical editors at the Respiratory Society, and as I said, I went for the interview. So it was a little bit of process of elimination, and then that kind of like just setting up alerts and just by chance spending some time going through them and finding that one. But I mean, I like in my job, and I think today is probably one of the things that I like most, is the variety, where I can be writing an editorial. I generally do that on Wednesdays, because C&EN goes to print on Thursdays, which is the print version of C&EN. But I also, sometimes interview people. I do a lot of kind of like team management. We do a lot of innovation work. We look at new products. I also talk to, people within, governance within ACS. So it's very varied. And I love that now. And I used to love that then, or at least I was aspiring to find a job that was like that had all that, I guess that flexibility and variety. And yes, and I knew I couldn't be in the lab.
That's the process of elimination is a very interesting process. Like, I think most people go through that in their life. Like, it may not look like there's a process of elimination, but ultimately it is probably the process of elimination that helps people to find the right path. It's a belief of mine, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, I mean that's what you're doing, right? Because I think some people have a very clear path, and I also find that problematic, though. And I know I've met people in my life that had a path that they were, kind of like going to follow, and then life has its ways to kind of take you off that path, and I think that sometimes people find it difficult because they had that vision in their minds, and I think that is a pity. Sometimes it kind of like throws them off chart. I was never like that. I never had a very clear idea where I was going. So I think that the kind of the selection process was a little bit more unconscious. But I agree with you. I think that the process of elimination happens anyway, and it's about what you like, what fits your personalities, and then there's a little bit of luck and chance involved with all of this.
I agree. So what do you love the most about being in the publishing industry?
Right. So, well, what I like about it is that it's very dynamic. There's a lot of change happening. I think a lot that is happening because of, new technologies. So when you think about AI and, so artificial intelligence, also, virtual realities and augmented realities and all those kinds of things. And that's really interesting because we need to think about how we may use those technologies in what we do, right? So specifically for chemistry, I think that things like AR or VR, when you are able to visualize, molecules or even reactions happening, I think that is going to be phenomenal when we can do that easily, right? Because at the moment, you need headsets and you need equipment and all that. So we're kind of like, very, very early stages of that. But I think that is going to be really exciting, especially when you think about training, and then education. I think it's going to be phenomenal. So I think that, organizations like ACS would do well to be, pioneers in that area. So technology is one, and then of course artificial intelligence. I think, that goes without saying. I think that is helping a lot with the publishing industry already. Where things like, for example, if you look at our website for C&EN or even for ACS, the recommendations of additional content that you might like to read. That is all done by AI, while before it was done manually. And it goes further than that, like recommendations of reviewers for specific papers. That is happening.
Oh, really? That I did not know
AI
that.
now. Yes. And there's a lot of piloting, that is happening to speed up the process, right? And the thing is that if you do it well, you can always look at your algorithms, validate your results, and then keep kind of tweaking that. But so it is very dynamic, because I think the technologies are really changing the way we do things on a daily basis, pretty much, right? And then I think that there's trends like certainly open science, and I think that's affecting a lot, the kind of the journals area, and data and how we treat data. I think from a news perspective, which is more the area that I'm working in. There's always something new that is happening in industry and education. We report science or chemistry at the cutting edge, so it's really exciting to be, kind of looking at what's next and be able to tell people about it. So, from that perspective, I think that it is something that I enjoy, and my team love it, and especially those kind of like forward-looking pieces, where we're, looking at, we're seeing a trend here. Let's write a story about something that we think is going to be important next year. And I think that is fantastic. So yeah, I mean, it is, again, very vibrant, very dynamic. It is very global as well, because, again, we are communicating with scientists from all over the world. Publishing as a business is a global business. And, from that perspective, I think that makes it really interesting, because we talk to a lot of, diverse people, and we get to travel quite a lot. I mean, not now because of COVID, but actually last year, just before COVID hit, I was due to go to Qatar, of all places. I've never been to the Middle East, and I was looking forward to that, but we had to cancel it. I think the event was happening on March the 12th, and that was when lockdown started. So we had to cancel that trip. So I'm hoping once COVID is under control, we can return to that, and I can go to Qatar.
Funny that you mentioned Qatar. Like my brother is actually based on Qatar, so he works there. Right. So let me follow up on that, the VR part of it. So is there any companies or are there any organizations that are currently like investing their time and money in educating science through VR, like that you're aware of?
Right. It'd be hard for me to name one off the top of my head. I know that the big players like Google and Facebook are doing a lot of work to make the technologies kind of easy and cheap, so easy to use and cheap that it can be deployable. I think that there's some, I couldn't tell you the name. I don't remember.
That's all right. Yeah.
Right now. Because I've been in demos and things like that, but I don't remember the names right now.
Yeah. So let me go back to the original question of the science communication. So what do you think is a real job of a science communicator is?
Well, okay, so that's an interesting conversation, and one that we have, very often, because I think that within science communication, there's a lot of different jobs that you can do. I think that, for example, there's the science communicators that work at universities as communications officers. So when there is research that is, coming out of the organization, they will talk to the scientists, and then they will write something, a press release that will, potentially something for their website that will alert people to, this new piece of research that the organization has created. And I think that's great work, and you get a lot of, very good, very qualified people doing that job. I would put that in the category of promoting science. Although, again, that could be quite controversial. Then what my team does is not in that space, because we don't see ourselves as promoting science. We see ourselves as informing people about the latest developments in science, in chemistry, in particular in this case. So we're not promoting chemistry per se, but we're informing members of ACS and chemists and the general public about the latest developments in chemistry across industry, academia, policy, education, and all those different areas. And from that perspective, we govern ourselves by very high ethical standards and journalistic standards. So things like independence. First of all, we're independent from ACS and any other organization. So my team write what they need to write. They are not influenced by any kind of like external parties or anything like that. And then we have those values are very important to us in the independence, transparency as well in how we obtain the information, how the science is funded and all those kinds of things. What we do is different from that perspective. Again, we don't see ourselves as promoting science. We see ourselves as informing people about what is happening in the sciences, and I think that that's a significant a difference. And we can go a lot into the detail of.
Yeah, I would like to actually. Like, I want to learn. Okay. I want to learn what is actually science communication, if per se.
Yes, right. So, and I would say that then within that you have for example, the university communications officers. Then you have what my team do, which I would say is journalism, science journalism, which is different from science communication. And then you have a lot of people working in the journals space as well, where, again, they're communicating about science. And there you have the technical editors, managing editors. So, for people who have, degrees in science, all these are opportunities that are open to them. And they're very interesting. From the point of view of what my team does, so we cover, as I said, industry. We cover cutting edge science. So we look at the, all the papers from Science, Nature, of course, ACS, RSC, and we look for what's new, what areas are hot. The people within my team, they all have a bit. So some people are looking at AI, for example, that we were talking about earlier, or we're talking about inorganic chemistry or analytical. Sometimes it's the traditional, sometimes the non-traditional. And we have daily and weekly meetings where people come with these stories that we should cover. Sometimes they are kind of they come from the journals through us looking for information to cover, and sometimes authors they send us the papers ahead of them being published, and we respect the embargo. So they will say, I have a big paper coming up in Nature next week, and here's a proof. It hasn't been published yet, but you can take a look and tell me if it is worth covering. So we get a lot through that, and there's personal relationships between the journalists, the reporters in my team, and then the scientists in the fields that they are covering. And the same happens in industry as well, where we will look at press releases from different organizations, but also a lot happens through personal interactions. Some people in the team have been covering the industry for a long time, so they have deep connections. And that is kind of like a little bit reactive, because these news happen, and then we get to hear about them through, as I said, press releases or connections. But then there's also what I was telling you about earlier, which is when we identify a trend, or one of the reporters will say, I've been reading papers about these things, or I've had 3 conversations in the last 2 weeks about this specific topic. I think there's something here. So then the more kind of like forward looking, or the trend stories as we call them, they come up or they come out of those kinds of conversations or realizations that there's something happening in a specific area, and then. So basically, as I said, we have daily and weekly meetings to discuss what we want to write about, because of course, the day only has so many hours, and there's a lot of things that we have to say no to, unfortunately.
So you guys used to meet through Zoom or like in person?
Well, now Zoom, yes,
before.
yeah. Oh, and before as well. So actually, I should explain that, because my team is distributed. So a few of us, certainly less than a half, are here in Washington D.C. So we will be in the office at the ACS headquarters. But I would say that more than a half of my team are in locations elsewhere. So we have people in Germany. We have people in the UK, and then a lot in the US, in New York, Chicago, Boston, Portland, San Francisco. So they're all over the place. And because of this, actually, we were, I would say, well prepared for the pandemic, because we were already communicating using Zoom. We also use Slack as a kind of, instant communication tool. And Slack is fabulous because it really allows us to react very quickly to breaking news, to problems as well, and also share widely with the team, but also share photos of dogs and kids and all that kind of thing. So,
somebody was telling me this actually, like when you put a content out there, like you're not competing with your podcast, or like you're not competing with someone who does the podcast. You're actually competing with cat and dog videos.
Yes, that's true. And I think that these days, because we have been so isolated, it's nice to see, other people's families. And also, actually, one thing that we do a lot is recipes. We have in Slack, we have a recipe channel for the C&EN team, and that's quite vibrant as well. So yeah. But anyway, what I was saying is that, we had these tools pre-pandemic because the team is distributed, first of all, but also because people travel a lot, because, there's everybody has a busy schedule, and there's a lot of, trips that we need to do throughout the year. And from that perspective, we need to be able to have people interviewing or attending an event or a conference or an exhibition and reporting straight away. So from that perspective, Zoom, we were already using Slack, and then all our documentation is on the cloud. So anybody can access from anywhere. And that's not the same for the rest of our organization. So for them, when the pandemic started, it was a harder transition, but for us, it was pretty easy.
So now that we are in the topic of how C&EN works, I want to actually get some numbers or like some data about C&EN. Like, these are always my curiosity, as that how many subscribers does C&EN has?
Right. So C&EN, we have different channels to reach different audiences, and I guess the one that is the most or one of the most popular, so the one that is the most visible is the weekly issue, which we send in print to, 45,000 people, and then we have a digital edition, which is a kind of like a replica version of that. But overall, we see our kind of like core group of readers as the members of ACS, and that is currently, I think, 157,000.
Wow, that's a very high number. And what does that age group look like? Like, so it's like mostly professors, I mean, or
right. Yes, well, good question. Yes, it's one of the largest scientific societies in the world. Certainly the largest in chemistry, but one of the largest in the sciences. And so 157,000 members. I think that overall the age average is around 55, something like that. So it's skewed reasonably old, middle age, I would say. And then, for a breakdown from the point of view of industry versus academia, I would say that it's about 55% academia these days, and 45% industry. And we have a lot of students. And actually, international component is growing every day. I mean, we're getting more and more international members for ACS. But also, I mean, as I'm saying this, for January 2022, we are launching a new membership model with new membership tiers, different groups. So I think that is going to change that mix quite significantly. So wait and see. But at the moment, very happy with where we are in terms of the numbers, and I think that a lot of the members are very engaged with the work that we do. So yes, and I think, I mean, as I was saying before, C&EN is one of the main member benefits. We do, as an organization, ACS, surveys of membership to look at satisfaction and those kinds of things on a regular basis, and C&EN comes up as the top benefit. And actually it's getting even better. I was actually this morning looking at the latest survey results, and we track how important the benefits are versus how well used they are. And, C&EN is right at the top in terms of how well used it is. And it's actually becoming more and more important. But in terms of usage, we're at the 99%. In terms of the scale. And I think in terms of importance, we're around something like 76%.
Wow, that's a good number. That's an awesome number. Yeah, I mean, I can endorse C&EN for you as well. Like, C&EN is actually it's one of the magazines that I make sure that I read every week. So it's actually something which has, like, from my grad school I've been following, and it is actually one of the biggest benefit of ACS rather than the national meetings. So
yes.
Now that it's not happening, C&EN has become even better at its position, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. I think that my team are outstanding, and I think I don't say that enough. But it's very professional people, and they're very proud of the work that they do. I think that we have very high standards for the work that we do in terms of the quality, and it's real journalism that we do, and I don't know if people appreciate that. But I would say that in the last few years, I think that C&EN has changed, and I think it's because of the mix of people that we have in the team. I think it feels fresher and younger and more diverse. I think that the team again have pushed for greater diversity in terms of what stories we cover and why, and the kind of people that we portray in the publication. And that certainly precedes me, but in the last 5-6 years we've kind of doubled down on that effort, and I think it is important that we do that. So but it's outstanding team.
Yeah, you guys do a wonderful job. So let me ask you, like, since you're talking about the outstanding team that you have, how do you choose your team? What are the things that you look for in both journalists and also when making the editorial cut of the work?
Right. So it's interesting because the kinds of things that we look for is people who can, again, talk about science, about chemistry with rigor, and I think from that perspective, I'll give you an example of the kinds of things that we do. So, for example, for a somebody that starts kind of like at the bottom of the scale, which would be as an associate or assistant editor, associate editor, we generally ask for some of work. When we advertise a job. And we look at those samples, but also we do a couple of tests where we ask them to do a pitch test. So, what story, if you had the opportunity to write and publish a story in C&EN tomorrow, what would that story be? So they need to pitch that as they would do in a daily meeting. And then we also give them a story to write, and, we give them sometimes a paper, and they will have to say, I write the story. They obviously will not go and interview people, but they say, well, who would they interview? The kinds of questions that they would ask, and those kinds of things would have to be reflected in there. So as I said, for that kind of like entry level positions, there is some. And then there's the pitch test, and then the writing test, and then probably one or two interviews. Generally, the hiring manager will interview this person, and then it is likely that either myself or my editorial director, we might interview them separately. That doesn't happen all the time. It depends on what else we have on, but it is quite a rigorous process. We also do a lot of internal documentation that we keep for these interviews to make sure that we have a pool of candidates that is diverse, because that's important to all of us. So in terms of where we advertise the positions, but also how we interview people and why, that is all important. So there's a lot of conversations that happen within the group of the hiring manager and people above them, to make sure that we are not inviting the right people to the table, if that makes sense. So yes. So if you were interested in a job tomorrow, you would certainly have to provide a CV sample and do those a few tests, and then from an internal perspective, we would do a lot of work in terms of looking at the pool of candidates that we have, and we would compare resumes or CVs. In the old times or years ago, we always would ask for somebody who had a chemistry degree as required, and ideally with a PhD. But we are relaxing that, because again, we want to be inclusive and make sure that we have again a diverse pool of candidates. There's a lot of good communicators that don't have a PhD in chemistry, right? Or even a degree in chemistry. They could have a degree in something else, even journalism. So we are a lot more open about those kinds of things these days. But yeah, it's a pretty rigorous process. I would say.
I can see that. So previously we had I had academicians come to the podcast, so they think through in a more superficial way, but this is a very well structured way of hiring people. That is good to know. So let me divert the topic a little bit and ask you about your alter ego as a powerlifter. So I watched a video.
Yes.
I cannot let you go without asking this. So I watched a video in Twitter, I think, of you lifting 320 pounds as a powerlifter, right? How did that happen? Like, what inspired you to do that?
I don't know. Donuts.
That's a very precise answer, buddy.
Yeah. So that happened in 2016, and so I told you that when I was in the UK, I used to play cricket because I just thought it was really interesting. And my husband said, well, why don't you, as a means of meeting people, why don't you go and join the local club, right? And I joined the club in Derbyshire, and I made some excellent friends through that. So I trusted his judgment with this. And so for the powerlifting, it was him again who said, as your, I think it was my 41st birthday, he said, I want to buy you a session with a trainer in our gym, and there's all the trainers, or the majority, were doing powerlifting of some description, and this guy I think he would be perfect for you. So I just went and had that first lesson, and then I stayed with it because I really enjoyed it. But within less than a year, I took part in that competition. That was, as I said, May 2016, and I broke the world record for my age and weight.
That is incredible. That's very inspiring.
Yes, it was fun. Yes.
So how long did you train for that?
As I said, I had only been doing it so my birthday is in June, and this competition was in May the following year. So 11 months.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And then
Is it like you are always been strong, or is it like you just picked it up for 11 months and you become strong?
Well, I mean, I had never done any powerlifting before, so I had no idea. I am reasonably strong, yes.
Because cricket
But I
doesn't need
had
strength.
no, it doesn't. I had not really, practiced any kind of sport seriously before. But I'm very proud of that because I think that is something that I think is a kind of like an unusual thing to do, powerlifting in itself. And I think that having a world record is
It's amazing.
even more unusual. Although the record has already been broken. I think it was broken in 2018, I believe.
That's fine. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, because I actually have a certificate
Oh,
in
wow.
my room, that says I broke the world record. So I'm very proud of that. And these days, I mean, because of COVID, I haven't really been doing a lot of work, but I'm hoping that soon I'll be able to go back in the gym and do a little bit of work.
Oh, nice. You can actually probably break it once again. So,
Yes, it gets easier as you get older because there's less competition.
Yeah.
So
so I mean, I am very curious about this lifting part actually. So, when you did your life change after that? Like after you did that world record, like did you feel anything different?
I didn't, but my colleagues did because I showed them the video. And I said, listen, I'm that strong, so you better watch out.
Yeah, 320 is like one person, right? Like it's more than one person. You can probably lift two people at the same time. So
Yeah, it's about 150 kilos, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more than twice my body weight. Yeah. I mean, I think that it doesn't change your life per se, but I think it's just something that is nice that you have there that you can share with other people. I think it's a bit of a crazy story, and as I said, it's unusual. So I think that it makes it memorable. And recently, I'm part of the board of directors for an organization in the associations and society space, about publishing. And so, we were doing a little bit of a kind of, kind of like meet and greet. And basically you were given the name of a person within the group, and you had to kind of like go and research them and then say something about them, kind of like introduce them to the rest of the team. So the person who was present or introducing me, then he found this video that you're referring to on Facebook, I think it is, and so that's what he was talking about. He didn't say what I worked in or anything like that.
I think this is way more important than that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Who cares about work titles and stuff like that? It's just this is important.
Yeah. So now that let's go back to the one I had, like maybe one or two questions left. So what do you think is the future of science communication in chemistry and chemical engineering is?
Right. So I think the future is bright because I think that there is a hunger for rigorous information about the sciences in general, absolutely chemistry. I think that the whole pandemic has demonstrated that usage on our website last year went absolutely through the roof because we produce a lot of content around COVID, and people were really hungry for a location or a destination where you could find authoritative, rigorous content that you could trust. And so from that perspective, I think that that's kind of like the baseline that we're kind of operating off. I think that there is a lot of interest in science. I think there's a lot of interest in chemistry. I think when you talk about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, you would struggle to find one that doesn't have chemistry reflected in it somehow. In fact, the ACS has done some work in terms of really identifying where chemistry can move the needle when it comes to water, health, medicines, and all that kind of thing. So our work is just there, communicating all those discoveries. And where discoveries are not made, what's next, what are the options. And of course, because we cover we cover pharma, biotech, the chemical industry. So, when you talk about plastics, again, that's another big crisis that we're facing, climate change. We cover that too. So, and all that is getting, more and more important in the public eye. When just those three things, health because of the pandemic, then the environment because of climate change and plastics. That is really areas that we are really going to be working a lot on, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to make sure that the public know what's happening, what the new advances are, and those kinds of things. From the point of view of the publishing industry itself, as I said, it's very dynamic. So there's new technologies and all those kinds of things happening. But for us, what we're doing more and more is communicating via different channels. So years ago, we used to produce a print publication and then put content on the website. But there's so many things that we do these days. We have podcasts like you do. We have a podcast at C&EN. We have videos. We produce newsletters. We have events. So we are, again, communicating science, but through a variety of different, channels, platforms, media, and from that perspective is very rich. And there's different levels of expertise that apply to each one of those, channels or platforms. So from that perspective, we're not going to be short for topics to talk about, but I think, technology and the way that the industry is evolving means that we need to continually kind of hone our skills to make sure that we are in the right place at the right time. We are where people needs us to be, to talk about science and to talk about chemistry. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be great for science communicators in general, but for science journalism, I think it's going to be, very nice over the next, 10 to 15 years, for sure.
True. So there is one thing I wanted to ask you, because since you are from an editorial board member and you do a lot of editorial work, is there anything you don't like about the way academicians write papers? Or is there a way you can, if you have any advice to improve what they do?
Yes. I guess that, to me, I think that there's a lot of content, there's a lot of papers that are, being published. I think there is a, proliferation of information out there, a lot of data. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that there is a lot, and it makes it hard to kind of like navigate through that. I would say that their work in as far as it relates to what I do, hyping is something that we are very aware of. So we certainly don't want to hype anybody's research. I think that's something that we don't want to do. And again, journalistic values are important to us. And I think that, applies to the actual, authors and how people write their papers, right? I think that, there's one thing to have a cool headline or a title for your paper. But I think, we need to be careful about how we write research and again, kind of like down the line, how is communicated and then promoted by, university press officers and other people. So I think, and again, I think related to COVID, this is something that we, with the archives and preprints and all of that, we've seen a lot of, talk about, well, this hasn't been peer reviewed, but it's important that people hear about it. And I think that, yes, I think the hype and ensuring that the information is robust. I think that is important. And I think the other thing is that a lot of people are looking at these days is reproducibility, which I think that's another big issue. So, but again, from my position, there's nothing we can do about that. But I know that it really is something that people in the journals space and of course scientists themselves are really thinking about this in a big way. So yeah, those are just a couple of things.
Yeah, that I completely get that. So is there anything that you wished I had asked, or is there anything you would like to add to this show?
Yeah, I can't think of anything because we've talked a little bit about
everything.
About everything. Yes. No. So just I hope that the readers enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, best wishes for your future with C&EN and other future interviews, especially powerlifting. So I would like to see you
Thank
lift
you.
like 400. I don't know what is the world record for the lowest age or what is the highest woman category or like maybe men's category powerlifting highest weight. What is that? Do you happen to know?
I don't know.
Maybe 400, 450 or something maybe, or maybe that's a bit too much. I think.
Right. Well, in deadlift for men, they've like 600
Oh wow.
pounds. Oh yeah. Actually, I think that this is a guy. I don't remember his name, but I think he. Okay, I might say something that is wrong, but I think he lifted 1,000 pounds.
What?
And he burst a like a muscle.
Not
He
surprising.
almost passed out. But this guy is just
wow.
unbelievable. What's his name? He's British, actually.
Okay.
I don't remember the details, but for my age and so the new record, I think it's around 360 pounds from my 20s. So that's where it stands. So it's quite a lot of work to get.
You can do that. I have full faith in you and you doing a 380 and then making another headline. So that'll be very proud. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy that I got to do this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's it for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please find the show notes at thesoftmattershow.com for more details. That is thesoftmattershow.com. You can write your questions, suggestions, and everything else to me at amalnarayanan@thesoftmattershow.com. See you with another exciting episode soon. Until then, goodbye.